Welcome to today's webinar on Hackney Council's approach to delivering financial wellbeing in the workplace. I'm Lynn Sharp from the Improvement Service, and I'm joined here by my colleague Sandra Sankey, and we'll be hearing from Dan Paul, Head of HR and Organisational Development at Hackney Council. If you have any questions, please use the questions function, as we have time at the end of the presentations for questions and answers. I will now pass you on to my colleague Sandra.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lynn, for that introduction. Bear with me 1 second. You can all see the screen. Thank you. Apologies, I think I'm just trying to remove this from the front screen. Hopefully it won't come up again. Don't remind me again. Hopefully it will disappear now. Bear with me 2 seconds. There we go. Okay, thank you, everyone. Sandra Sankey from the Improvement Service. I've been working on the Money Advice Outcomes project for a few years now, and I've had a focus on the project the previous year around financial capability interventions, and one of those interventions had to look at guidance and good practice for local authority employers and how they support their employees around financial wellbeing. So I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of all the work that we've been doing, but just to highlight a couple of things to you before we move on to the main crux of the presentation today. So you may be familiar with the previous name, Money Advice Service, and the UK Financial Capability Strategy, and a number of steering groups across the UK. One of them had a focus on the workplace, and last year there was a big focus around employer engagement and around financial wellbeing. Hence why we were asked to start to have a look at this and have a look at what local authorities were doing to promote financial wellbeing in the workplace. I've highlighted the definition here of what we actually mean by financial wellbeing. We've started to have some conversations with some of you that are involved with the webinar today and other stakeholders to try to look at what will be meaningful guidance to develop for local authorities, and look at what interventions already exist or what would be good interventions to start to put in place in the workplace. Where improvements could be made, and also identify areas of good practice. So we have been engaging with a number of local authorities to input to this agenda, and we have been engaging with the COSLA HR Employer Forum as well, and will continue to update with briefing paper and guidance as we go forward. Now, some interventions took place last year in November during the annual Talk Money Week, and some of the local authority employers that started to engage with us in the project around the developing of the guidance and looking at interventions and engaging with employees actually took an approach to engage with their employees during the Talk Money Week as a way of trying to change the culture in the workplace around talking about money. I mentioned that we've been engaging with a number of stakeholders and also looking at interventions that currently exist and some that are developing. This will all be shared in their good practice guidance as we go forward. But one of the forums that we attended and had received feedback from stakeholders was to look at how we could share learning with you from elsewhere and other authorities around the UK. Hence why we have arranged this webinar today from Hackney Council, having in the last couple of months delivered one also from Leeds City Council. So if any of you listening today don't have that recording, we will get it onto our web pages and we can send out a link, but please don't hesitate to contact us afterwards. Now, I've mentioned to you that there's lots of evidence. I've just put up a snapshot here of some of the research reports and evidence that you can refer to see the business case as to why local authority employers and other employers should be looking to invest in financial wellbeing for their employees. So you may be familiar with the new name of the Money and Pension Service, and this is an amalgamation of the three. It's a new body that's been created of the three organisations highlighted here on the screen for the Money Advice Service, the Pensions Advisory Service and Pension Wise. So it's sponsored by the Department of Work and Pensions, but will also engage with the HM Treasury, who is responsible for the policy on financial capability and debt advice. So this next year is going to be a very important year. It's a transition year for this new organisation as it brings together the three services and as it delivers, on its listening engagement events it's going to hold. They've already started. If you're keeping up to date with Twitter and all the social media feeds, there's about 10 events happening throughout the UK, and there will be one event that's due to take place in Edinburgh on the 5th of June. Hopefully you've all received a link to sign up, for the listening event if you're interested in that. If not, we'll make sure we can get a link sent out to you after today. So the new body has 5 core functions, as I've highlighted here on the screen, and the listening events will help to inform the new national strategy and a 3-year corporate plan that will come into play around about November time this year. So it's very important that you can try and have a look at some of the strategic documents that have been produced during this listening phase, and if you cannot attend in person one of the stakeholder events, if you can respond, to the documents that have been produced and input and be having a say in what you feel the new strategy and 3-year action plan should have a focus on, and also look at your own contribution with that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm happy to take questions at the end and be contacted by anyone. We do have about 34 people registered to attend this webinar today, and very good representation across all more than 50% of the local authorities in Scotland, which is really, really good. Pleased with that. So please feel free to contact me anytime. I'm going to hand over to Dan now, if Lynn kindly helps with the software. Thank you.
Hello, hopefully that's worked. So if it has worked, you can now see the screen with a delightful picture of me. So what I've been asked to do today, and I'm grateful for being invited along, is to talk about our financial benefits, and also specifically to mention our newest financial benefit, which is wage stream. I thought I'd give a bit of background on Hackney first. There's a little map there, of which you can see Hackney on it. We are a London borough in the heart of East London. Politically, we have a large Labour majority, and we have a directly elected Labour mayor. We employ about 4,500 employees directly, and there's about another 4,500 employed in schools, although that changes fairly regularly, as you might imagine, with academy conversions. Let me just go to the next slide. There we go. So Sandra has spoken much more eloquently than I could about the evidence behind the need for financial benefits, but the CIPD report that 1 in 3 employees in the public sector, money worries have affected their ability to do their job, which is higher than the general average across sectors of 1 in 4. and its financial well-being is increasingly being seen as an important part of the wellbeing strategy, with clear business benefits, including reducing absenteeism and increasing productivity, as well as the more altruistic aims. So what do we do at Hackney? Well, these are the basic things. So local government pension scheme, sick pay, London living wage, and using the factor-based GLPC, that's Greater London Provincial Council job evaluation scheme. So those are what we regard as the very basic elements of our financial package. We do benefits which I'm sure most of you guys do as well. Interest-free season ticket loans, salary sacrifice, advice on budgets and debt management through the EAP, that's Employee Assistance Programme. We've got well-established staff benefits in place, and 3 years ago we introduced a card that provides discounts at a wide range of UK retailers together with local offers. We'd surveyed our staff a few years before on this, and discounts were particularly popular with our lower paid staff. And with the pay squeeze in the public sector and the fact that we, like I'm sure you, couldn't afford to give huge pay rises, we wanted to find ways to make the base salary go further. And we have other schemes promoting wellbeing and work-life balance, such as discounted corporate gym memberships, discounted exercise classes, and discounts on cinema tickets. We promote savings through payroll deductions to credit unions. Now, that is a benefit that people like Salary Finance and Wage Stream, who I'll come on to talk about, also provide, but which we already do through our local credit unions. Now, a bit of benchmarking. Every year we lead on a survey that benchmarks our staff benefits for other London boroughs. There's 33 London boroughs, so we have a reasonable sample size of people to compare with. The last survey we did in July 2018, and the response rate was just under 50%, so we had 16 responses. What this showed us was that 75% of respondents promote low-cost loans. Almost all respondents offer interest-free season ticket loans. Things that are less common include things like loans for tenancy deposits and childcare costs. So, a bit more on the benchmarking. We did some, as well as these direct financial stuff, we do benchmarking on work-life balance and family-friendly policies. And our benchmarking shows that all respondents offer some sort of employee assistance programme. Almost everybody offers a cycle to work scheme or a cycle loan scheme. 90% do corporate or discounted gym membership, and most offer a health plan, just over 60%. Just over 1/3 offer private health insurance, which is interesting. We have taken, and our members have taken, a deliberate decision not to offer either cars or private health insurance. As an inner London borough, cars aren't our priority, quite the opposite in fact. So we have chosen not to offer benefits that don't chime with what our political leadership want to do for London. We've looked quite carefully at benefits that, as I say, chime with what our political leaders want to do. One of the things that is a big focus for us is housing and renting costs. So one of the things we've done is offer a tenancy deposit loan. We know that our new and existing employees, many of them in Hackney, are private renters, and it is difficult to get together a deposit for a place. And if you're moving to Hackney, with tenancy deposits, you quite often have to shell out a new one if you're moving before you get your old one back. So we will offer a loan to cover, effectively a bridging loan, interest-free, to cover that gap as well. So that is something that we're doing specifically because of one of our local issues. And we've looked at what issues people face across their lifestyle. So young people starting out in their careers might have different needs to those in more established careers, different to the pressures on parents, and again different for employees planning for retirement. We have signed up to the Smallest Things campaign, which highlights that new parenthood, particularly premature babies, are one of the most stressful experiences a new parent can go through. And so there's things we can do to help that. And here are the things we can do to help that. Some of them I've mentioned already. Wage stream, that's early access to pay available through wage stream. Financial organisations tell us that most people don't have savings to cover an unexpected expense of a few £100s. So benefits like early access to earned wages allows our employees to deal with emergencies without resorting to payday lenders that can trap people into significant interest rates and charges, leading to debt. Salary finance, introduced in January 2017, principally to allow people who already have high interest debt to consolidate their borrowing and reduce their interest rate costs. And I've already mentioned the tenancy deposit loan scheme introduced in September 2017. The average deposit on a privately rented home in London is about £1,600. So we will lend up to £3,000 over a period of up to 10 months to enable people to put down a deposit on a place. In April 2018, we introduced premature baby leave, and that's for parents with babies born before 37 weeks hospitalised receive an extra 1 day's leave on full pay for every day their premature baby spends in hospital before that 37 weeks. And the purpose of that is to ensure that maternity leave is for families to spend at home with their new baby. If your baby is in hospital, then you're not at home spending time with your family. So our intention there is to effectively make that time back up for our employees. We also offer financial education, including investing and saving and balancing budgets, pre-retirement courses and pensions after redundancy. So that talks to the employee life cycle that I was talking about before. We offer these courses sometimes internally, sometimes provided by our pension providers, Prudential or our pension actuaries, Aon Hewitt, and it's also available through the wage stream and salary finance platforms. So, wage stream, I've wanted to focus specifically on this. It was a big step for us to launch wage stream. Typically, the approach that we take is to look at where these things have worked well elsewhere, look at the benefits and look at the issues. There were no other councils that had introduced wage stream. I believe we were the first. Kind of increases the risk a bit. We ran a survey with our employees, asking them the questions you see there on the screen. And on that basis, we decided to launch. The responses were 161 is a reasonable response rate, and the percentage of people who wanted this benefit was high. And that encouraged us to launch. Here you see some take-up rates. So wage stream take-up 1.7%, launched, as you can see, very recently. That's March 2019, not March 2018. So that's launched very recently. Average transfer value of about 80 quid. So not huge amounts of money transferred, which is encouraging. One of our worries or potential worries about wage stream was we were aiming to get people out of debt and away from payday lenders and away from dependency. Would offering this service simply push more employees into dependency when they wouldn't otherwise have been in it? And the evidence that we have so far shows no. If that was something like 50%, then I would be much more worried. But the evidence that we have is that it's used well, and it's used by a minority of people, but those people really need it. Salary finance, 11.4% of eligible employees, which is a good take-out rate. As I say, the purpose of salary finance was primarily to consolidate debt at a lower rate. So our rate for salary finance loans is 7.9%, higher than you can get on the high street, but much lower than from payday lenders and other sources. So that was our aim with that. And the tenancy deposit scheme, you can see relatively low take-up, but again, important for a small number of employees. In terms of communicating our benefits, we promote them on a dedicated staff intranet page. We have a staff headlines, a weekly bulletin, and we regularly remind people, particularly around pinch points such as Christmas, of the support available. We've got an annual wellbeing event, and as so many of our staff benefits relate to wellbeing, we provide a stall for our providers. So all of our providers come in and they can talk directly to our staff about the benefits that we offer. The day is very well attended, offers health checks, activities, information, advice, and giveaways. If I'm entirely honest, the draw for people to come in, I think, is the machine which tells you what percentage of your weight is body fat, and the bike that lets you make a smoothie whilst you're cycling. So that's what draws people in, and then we get them when they're in there around our benefits and other things that we offer as an employer. On the screen, some examples of our staff headlines communications. And then what's next? We think we'll continue benchmarking. We'd like to get a better understanding of take-up and the value benefits hold for our staff, particularly around wage stream, because it's so new. And get a better understanding of how we use things. We're obviously a local authority, same as you guys, subject to the same resource constraints, but we will continue to ensure that our offer is competitive, reflects our values, and supports the health and well-being of our staff. We have 33 London boroughs around us who we compete with for staff, as well as the private sector just down the road in the city, who pay an awful lot more than we do. So for those roles where you can do it either in the private or the public sector, we have a job on to retain our staff. So we will also make sure we use MI to explore take-up, and as I mentioned, check the regular use of wage stream isn't creating a dependency. If it is, we can target advice and debt management to those who are using the service a lot. And those are things that we want to explore further. And I think that is it, unless anyone has any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. That was really informative presentation. And I think myself and my colleagues and participants listening today will certainly have learned a few things from your authority that we're perhaps not considering yet at this stage, you know, with our employees in Scotland, and maybe it's something to consider in the future, but it gives an opportunity now for people to ask questions and learn more about some of the interventions that are out there to support staff. While we're just waiting on people coming in with some questions, my colleague Lynn will keep me informed when there's questions come up.
Yeah, if you want to use if you have any questions, just use the questions panel within the webinar software.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. What I will say to participants is that we will send out a few survey questions after today, just to ask for some more information as to obviously how useful the learning has been today, but also for other people to maybe share areas of good practice for supporting financial wellbeing in your own workplace, and you know what maybe development is actually happening, and any other sort of further support that you think may be needed to help you, you know, drive some of this forward. So we'll make sure that we send that out, as well as a link to this webinar and a recording of the webinar today. I realised, Dan, you highlighted that one of your dates was wrong, so we could perhaps get an update of the slides. We can make sure that we send the updated version out to participants along with the recording. We can also send out a link to a case study that already is existing on the Local Government Association website, which is how I helped to come across some of the work that you were doing in Hackney, so we can get that sent out too. And any other further slides, Dan, you mentioned you're working with Salary Finance and Neighbour. Some of our local authorities are working with a different provider now to offer loans to employees, and we have a big credit union partnership working as well in Scotland. So there's a number of things to draw down and learn. I have, just for the benefit of people listening, I have been engaging with some of these stakeholder organisations as well in the course of my work, and I'm happy to try to answer some questions or put you in contact with some of the key people if you want to follow up and learn a bit more from what Dan's been talking about today. And I have a few other separate presentation slides that have maybe been shared with me that will give you a bit of an overview on some of them too. Okay, I think Lynn may have some questions that are coming in now, which is good.
So we have a few questions about wage stream. So how well received was wage stream by your payroll section? Does it involve a lot of work for them?
Yeah, I'm often in trouble with our payroll manager for introducing new benefits, because payroll is I know people organise payroll differently. In Hackney, payroll is part of human resources. So that gives me an advantage in that I can decide what I want payroll to do and what I want them not to do. But I get regularly into trouble with our payroll manager for making them do new things. This is not a huge amount of work, but it is some work. I would say it's probably more work for the IT team and the payroll team, because the way we do it relies on file transfers between the council and wage stream. So there is very little manual input for payroll. The way the process works isn't a traditional salary deduction. The employee signs up with wage stream, and from that point, we route the entire salary for that employee to wage stream, who then route it out again to the employee. Now, as they route it out to the employee, they take back to themselves the amount of any deductions that the employee's been advanced that month. So effectively, rather than sending the money direct to the employee's bank account, we send it to a wage stream bank account that's then automatically passed through in a matter of a few seconds to the employee's bank account. So it is more work for the IT team to set it up than it is for the payroll team to administer.
So a kind of related question is, how much additional resource is required for the administration of wage stream?
About half an hour a month on the payroll side. Almost all of the work is in the setup. So there's not a lot of setup for payroll. It's a simple matter of changing bank details, which we can do automatically through a file transfer. We chose to invest more time in the setup and less time in the ongoing maintenance of it. That's a choice. You could do some of these things manually via payroll. We chose to invest the time to do it automatically up front. So there's very little in it for payroll on a monthly basis. I would, half an hour a month, very small amount of
time. Is there a limit to the number of times a colleague can access wage stream a year?
There's a limit per month. That can be, you can, as an organisation, you can set that to whatever you like. So the default, I believe, is 10 times a month. You can change that either for all employees or for individual employees to whatever you like. The kind of control is with you, or in this case us, as the employer. We can do it via a web-based platform that we use. The complication for us, and I don't know if it's the same for Scottish councils, is that we pay employees in the middle of the month, 2 weeks in advance and 2 weeks in arrears. So we pay on the 15th. And that means that you can only, if you're an employee, you can only access your wages between the 1st and the 15th of the month, because it is earned wages that you're accessing. In the second half of the month, you've already been paid for that work, because you were paid on the 15th of the month. So the window for us, and this was one of the complicating factors, is the 1st to the 15th of the month. If you pay employees at the end of the month, then your window is the whole month. It's different. But the short answer is yes, for us there is a limit, and you can set the limit to whatever you choose it to be.
So would the pay be sent to WageStream on a one-off monthly basis or ongoing?
Ongoing. So once the employee is signed up to WageStream, unless they go to the effort of unsigning up, then their pay is automatically routed through WageStream every month. If the employee makes no advances in their salary that month, they simply get their whole salary, but they still get it through the WageStream route. You can't tell it's happening because the bank statement of the employee says exactly what it says when we send our pay directly to it. But what is happening is the money is being sent via a pass-through account at WageStream to the employee. And that's the case every month after they've signed up.
That's great, thanks. We've got a couple of questions about the reaction of credit unions. So has there been any conflicts between credit unions and the salary finance that you've had to overcome?
No, there's been no reaction whatsoever from credit unions, although I have been careful not to offer a savings product because that would be in direct competition with our local credit unions, whereas I consider salary finance and WageStream not to be in direct competition.
So have your credit unions reported a reduction in their new customers since you have engaged with WageStream and salary finance?
No.
And then how have your trade unions responded to the benefits, the employee benefits?
Positively. So we engaged the trade unions before we launched both of those benefits. So before we launched salary finance and before we launched WageStream, they have responded positively. They have raised with us a couple of cases where the employee hasn't understood what WageStream is, and we've tried to explain it. Like I say, those cases were because we pay in the middle of the month. So the employee is struggling to understand why they can't get money through WageStream in the second half of the month. But it's because they've already been paid that money on the 15th previously. So that's a challenging communication for us, communicating that benefit, and the way that works. But we have a positive relationship with our trade unions at Hackney, and they have responded well to these benefits.
If you have any more questions, just use the questions panel.
Okay, thank you, Dan. That was really, really good. Learning from some of the questions and feedback answers that you were given there. I've got a question, Dan. You spoke about your annual wellbeing events that you hold. Could you tell me, have you got a date for your next annual wellbeing event, and what sort of planning goes into that? You know, what sort of stakeholder organisations? I know you touched on that, earlier in some of it, but just to give us a feel for the sort of planning that goes into these events.
Yeah, sure. Well, we have an all-staff event in the town hall. We're very fortunate to have effectively assembly rooms. Our town hall is a 1920s, 30s built building with a large assembly room in it. So we use that for the main staff event. It's on the 3rd of July this year, and we're having a smaller event at our main waste depot on the 14th of May, recognising that our waste employees can't all get away on the 3rd of July to come to our main event. So we have a separate event for them as well at their depot on May the 14th. In terms of stakeholders involved in Hackney, it tends to be human resources, communications and public health leading the event. We have things like, I mentioned some of it, but checking your BMI, a diabetes check, a blood pressure check, cyclist smoothie, a rowing machine challenge. And we have people from our partners, leisure centres, and the whole range of staff benefits there. It's well attended by staff, it's well attended by members who come to support the event. We tend to get various freebies from our suppliers, so they bring stuff along. And we have the HR and OD team and the public health team both have stalls where we try and provide an overview of benefits and things that staff can take advantage of. It does take some organising, but our suppliers are very keen to showcase their wares. So they are very supportive in in coming along and helping us organise it and providing the goods. So it takes some organising, but we really do believe it's worthwhile. Feedback tells us it's something that staff really enjoy doing, so it's something that we certainly intend to continue doing.
Okay, thank you, Dan. I think we've got another question.
Yep. So, have you had to go through procurement to bring these companies on board? So, wage stream and salary finance.
Our procurement rules are specific in terms of how much we can spend without going through a full contract process. So I've engaged with procurement on both the salary finance offer and the wage stream offer, but it hasn't been too onerous.
Thank you, Dan. I don't think we've got any more questions. Maybe just before we finish up, maybe just ask you a little bit more about the targeted financial education that you mentioned with senior managers, Dan, and looking to invest. Can you tell us how you went about that?
Yeah, we recognise that everybody, as I mentioned, has different needs, and we wanted to make sure that our senior managers have some advice that might suit their needs. All of our financial wellbeing benefits are open to senior managers, but we do recognise that their interest might be a bit different. So we've offered managers the opportunity to attend a seminar that provides an overview of investing, followed by the opportunity for free one-to-one confidential advice sessions after that. And we also offer pensions advice for senior managers, bearing in mind the annual and lifetime allowances and how defined benefit pension schemes can impact upon that. And our financial education for senior managers is run by the Prudential. They are our financial advisors for pension investment. So they're already vetted and good, we think, for providing that sort of advice to senior managers. And that has been very popular, particularly the pension sessions.
Okay, thank you. A couple more questions.
Yeah. So since launching the new financial advice and wellbeing work, have you noticed a reduction in sickness absence?
It's hard to, I'm sure you'll hear this a lot, but it's hard to pin things specifically onto specific things that we do. So the honest answer to that is I can't put my hand on my heart and say that these things that we do have directly impacted upon sickness. I feel like they have. I feel like the feedback that we're getting from employees is that they have, because we know that some people have come to us and said, I was feeling really down about my finances, and this was a salary finance specific one actually, but salary finance and the opportunity we've given them has enabled them to deal with what they were dealing with, come back to work and focus on work. So I don't think it's just about sickness absence, it's also about concentration and productivity whilst you're at work. If you're worrying about your financial situation whilst you're at work, then you're not giving your full attention to your work. So I do think it will have improved productivity. I do think it will improve sickness. Can I point to any specific measures and any specifics of where it's happened? No.
Just another question about wage stream and salary finance. Are there charges that you incur as a council for using these services, these wage stream and salary finance?
I can't say specifically what they cost us. They do cost us, but we consider that to be good value in the context of what it gives us.
And have you considered offering one-to-one financial advice sessions for all colleagues?
We haven't considered it for all colleagues. We've considered it for senior managers. It was appropriate for that. I guess that resource constraints would be an issue for us there. We've got 4,500 employees, so providing one-to-one sessions for everybody would be a bit of a challenge. I'm open to thinking about it, but it's not something that I think I can resource at the moment.
Okay, thanks very much, Dan. I think I'd just like to say thank you very much, Dan, for giving us your time today. It's been really, really good to have that learning shared with us. Is there anything that you want to ask before we close for today, Dan?
No, I don't think so. Only to say that, again, thank you very much for having me. And if anyone has any specific questions or wants to follow up more directly with me, then I'm very happy to do that.
I think we've got your contact details on your last slide on your screen as well, which will be
there you are.
There we go. So Dan's contact details are all there to be shared with everyone. We will send out the survey. I would really appreciate if participants can complete that as soon as you can and send back. And don't hesitate to get in touch with Dan direct or myself for anything that you've been learning about today. And just like to take this time, Lynn, is there anything that you want to finish off with?
No, that's great. Thanks.
I'd just like to say thank you to Lynn as well for facilitating all the software and discussions for us today. Thank you, Dan, and also for your colleagues, because we've had a lot of engagement with your colleagues over the last few months leading up to this webinar. So thank you to them indeed for all the work that's going on behind the scenes as well. And thank you to yourself. And thank you to all the participants who've joined in the webinar. We'll get a link sent out as soon as we can and a recording of the webinar too. So we'll just bring the webinar to a close and wish you all a good day. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye now.